Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on The Rape of Lucrece, which is a very long poem about suicidal ideation and sexual violence towards women. Haha, I switched it up on you today. I did it in the opposite order. So if either of those are triggers for you, then please tune out. But if they are not, and you would like to stick around and hear today's stanzas, we're going to take a look at stanzas 213 to 216, which we're rejoining Lucrece as she is looking at this painting of the siege of Troy, the battle in Troy, which she went to look at this painting because she was tired of grieving and sort of done crying for right now, and she's waiting for her husband to come home so she can tell him the story of what happened to her. And she's looking at this painting, trying to find somebody in this painting that she can relate to, and she sees Hecuba, Hecuba grieving encapsulates her own grief. But she feels it's a little bit unfair that Hecuba was painted without a tongue, which makes sense. If her mouth was painted in a closed position, of course we're not going to be able to see her tongue. But she decided that she would start railing on behalf of Hecuba. So she's crying out and she's getting angry, and she ends up directing a lot of her anger at Paris because it's sort of his fault that this whole thing happened. She was like, if I could have made Helen less pretty so that he wouldn't do this whole thing, but it was the lust of Paris that made this entire war happen. And all these other people in this painting, these ones that are afraid and those mothers who are about to lose their sons, all of that is because this one guy couldn't keep it in his pants. And how is that fair? And she continues on with that ranting, saying, "Lo, here weeps Hecuba. Here Priam dies. Here manly Hector faints. Here Troilus swoons. Here friend by friend in bloody channel lies, and friend to friend gives unadvised wounds, and one man's lust these many lives confounds. Had doting Priam checked his son's desire, Troy had been bright with fame and not with fire." Here, feelingly, she weeps Troy's painted woes, for sorrow, like a heavy hanging bell, once set on ringing, with its own weight goes. Then little strength rings out the doleful knell. So Lucrece, set a work, sad tales doth tell to penciled pensiveness and coloured sorrow. She lends them words, and she their looks doth borrow. She throws her eyes about the painting round, and whom she finds forlorn, she doth lament. At last she sees a wretched image bound, that piteous looks to Phrygian shepherds lent. His face, though full of cares, yet showed content. Onward to Troy with the blunt swains he goes, so mild that patience seemed to scorn his woes. In him the painter labored with his skill to hide deceit and give the harmless show, an humble gait, calm looks, eyes wailing still, a brow unbent that seemed to welcome woe, cheeks neither red nor pale, but mingled so that blushing red no guilty instance gave, nor ashy pale the fear that false hearts have. So the first of these stanzas is Lucrece talking, and the last three are the narrator going on. But she's in that first stanza, she's continuing on with her anger towards Paris, saying, because of Paris, Hecuba loses her husband, Priam loses his wife, Hector, who is supposed to be so great, faints, and Troilus faints, and here friends are killing each other, all because of Priam and because of Paris, Priam being Paris's father. And if Priam had just, put Paris in his place, Troy could have been famous and lauded instead of burning to the ground. So, and then the last three of these stanzas anyway, is the narrator talking and saying, she's so swept up in her own grief that she just keeps going, and every face in the painting that she finds that has a little bit of sorrow, she empathizes with that character and sort of starts speaking and ranting on behalf of that character while she takes on like the physicality of their grief. But then she finally sees this one guy in the painting who is going to Troy, and he's got this sort of calm about him, even though in his eyes you can see that he's grieving, that he's, incredibly sad, incredibly burdened with whatever it is that he's burdened with, maybe just the fact that he's going to war. But the painter took such care to show that this man was sort of beyond grief, that he was just sort of calm about it now. He's resigned to his grief. He's not swept up in the same wave of passion that she's currently swept up in, which is interesting because she kind of got to that point where she was all cried out, and that's why she decided to go and look at this painting. So we're going to hear more about this particular person in the painting in just a little bit. But it's interesting that she goes from empathizing with Hecuba to focusing on this man who is so beyond grief that he's still very, very much suffering, but has hit a sort of calm about it, which also sort of makes me think of Buttercup in The Princess Bride, when she becomes the most beautiful woman in the world after she thinks she has lost Wesley. Just that knowing grief is what made her so much more beautiful. But anyway, and I'm sorry if I just spoiled The Princess Bride for you, but I didn't really spoil it because that's like early in the movie. But anyway, go watch The Princess Bride and then come back tomorrow and we'll find out what happens as Lucrece continues to look at this painting of the Siege of Troy. I'll see you tomorrow. Mwah.